Obviously, you know the reason we're here today to talk about what is commonly referred to as fake pot, synthetic cannabinoids, and synthetic cathinones. And I'm just going to start this off, and then each of my colleagues is going to speak and add their own kind of flavor to this. But this is something that my office started working on a number of years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago. And frankly, to credit one of my former staff members, he brought this to my attention. Over time, frankly, nothing has been done in terms of getting a chapter, but the severity and the magnitude of the problem has only become far more apparent, not only here in the state of New York, but all across the country. And if you look at these different things, there are real-life stories affecting people, predominantly young people. So I come at this, as do my colleagues, not only as a legislator and someone who's cared about this for a while, but as a parent, being the parent of 3 children. And when you think about the scourge of drugs and what it can do across our society, you look at that in the context of your own family and your own personal experience, and especially in light of the fact that the things we're going to talk about are right now legal. The governor has taken a positive step through an order out of the health department from the health commissioner, but we are building on that, and frankly, I think we're making it a lot stronger by putting it into statute. They started off, got the ball rolling, and I believe the legislation that we want to talk to you about today is a very positive step forward. And I'll put it in the context of the fact that if you look at national organizations, one of the organizations we work with is the National Conference of State Legislatures. And there are about 40 states now that have moved to ban this directly or to just outlaw it completely. There are efforts internationally. There are a number of countries internationally that have banned these substances. The federal government is taking more positive steps. The military has looked at this in more detail. So we're not acting in a vacuum here, and I believe that the facts and statistics bear out how important this issue is. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Senator Little.
Thank you, John, and thank you for being here today. This is really an important piece of legislation that is extremely necessary. First came to my attention, we knew the bill that Senator Flanagan had. I will tell you, I thought that was something that happened on Long Island that probably didn't happen in my area. I think it was Sylvia, the plant, whatever. However, my chief of police from Glens Falls came in to see me one day and said that something needs to be done. This is way last fall about this. He said, we're having break-ins at the convenience stores and at the smoke shops. And these kids are breaking into these places and they're running right by the cash register because all they want is this stuff. And they're just adamant in trying to get their hands on it and get it in their, using it. And then the second thing that started to happen is we're starting to hear from students. And I just want to, because we have a lot of people here that are going to tell you a little more about this. But I have a student who's an 11th grade student in Elizabethtown, Essex County, who had suffered seizures from smoking K2. And I have a quote from her, which I think takes a lot of courage for a young person to be able to admit what they were doing and how it reacted with them. And I quote Sarah, "You don't know if your life will end or you will be permanently damaged. Some of my friends got scared when they saw what happened with me, but there are still some who go to the local store and buy it. I don't know what would have happened if my boyfriend was not there to drive me to the emergency room. Every kid has to know about this, so I decided to tell my story, even though when it first happened, I was embarrassed." We also have a few other kids who have come forward and said, even admitted that they had smoked marijuana, but when they smoked this was much worse. And the violent behavior that they experienced. And that was another thing the chief of police said, is we're getting called to the high schools more often than we've ever been called to the high schools before for some violent behavior and someone acting out. But it's my privilege now to introduce my colleagues, and I think Senator Ritchie's going to talk, and then Senator Griffo. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Little. Obviously, this is a huge problem that's impacting the entire state, but it's particularly important in my district. I have the privilege to represent Fort Drum, and the growing use among young people is becoming a huge problem for the Army. The Army leadership was very proactive in the last few months, banning businesses, banning soldiers from going to businesses who actually sell fake pot. They actually have gone so far as that soldiers could be discharged from the Army if they are caught possessing the drug. So I would like to commend the governor and Commissioner Shaw for doing their best to try and get this drug off the shelf. I would also like to thank Senator Flanagan for his leadership in something that's so important and has such an adverse effect on my district. Thank you, Senator. I would also like to recognize law enforcement for the broad-based support, and also the law enforcement in my district who came to me early last year to tell me how was it affecting them and the number of cases that they were dealing with. So I'm glad that I could be here today.
Senator Griffa.
Thank you, Senator Little. I want to thank all my colleagues and also all those in law enforcement here today, our district attorney who is here, and the educators that are here, particularly Senator Flanagan, because he has truly been a leader in this for a long time in recognizing this. You know, we're accustomed in times of natural disaster to warn people to prepare and to be appropriately concerned. Well, this is a new scourge upon all of our communities, whether they're large or small, urban or rural, and it's imperative that we continue to educate people, that we continue to do our best to address this problem and ultimately to eradicate the problem. Last year, we took the first step here in this House, and we were fortunate to get the bill passed and signed into law that I sponsored to outlaw bath salts in this state, because we recognize that these are troublesome chemicals that are being used in ways that affect behavior and cause very dangerous situations to arise to individuals' health, and not only to one's own health, but to other people's health in the community, because you pose a danger to yourself, but also dangerous to others. And you see statistics and examples that you hear where that happens, and we cannot allow that to continue. So it's imperative that we take this effort again today, and that we understand as a result of the initiative that we are proposing that there should be a consequence for this action, and that we need to bring a sensible approach to very senseless actions that are taking place right now. So I appreciate that all are here today, and I'm hopeful that we will continue to move forward. I know Assemblyman Cusack is here too, so Chairman Flanagan.
I was remiss. I probably should have explained a couple of the components of the bill and made it clear what we are trying to do. As we had stated, the governor, through the health department and the health commissioner, basically banned the retail sale. So an offshoot of that is you end up starting to have street sales. So we now criminalize the sale and possession, and we parallel it to controlled substances and how concentrated cannabis is treated under the penal law. So it is virtually a direct parallel, and one of the things we're looking at is on school grounds or playgrounds or things like that. So whatever type of punishment you would be eligible for the sale and or possession of different substances under present law, the same thing would now apply to the bath salts and to the synthetic cannabinoids. And I want to add one other comment. All these things keep changing. And when we try and act as a legislative body, you know, I think to myself, I didn't really expect in my lifetime that you would have to go to a special place to get cough syrup. You know, with all the things that kids can do today, that's just a small element of what's out here. And what we've tried to do in crafting this bill is to draw it more broadly, so that, you know, Senator Griffa last year passed a chapter on bath salts, and the bad guys are out there playing around with it and figuring out how they can evade the statute. We did this similar to what's been done in many states across the country. We did it exactly with the verbiage that the governor put out through the health department. So we've broadened the classes to allow people like Kate Hogan the latitude to do her job in a more effective fashion. There is a 90-day effective date window for the sale, and 180 days for possession. We allow for a program so that these materials can be returned. We're not looking to try and go after some of these retail owners who are trying to do the right thing. And then finally, there's going to be a health department website that would lay out a lot of the materials, and in an effort to try and keep it as current as possible, listing what some of the compounds are, listing what some of the street names are. So that's kind of the crux of the bill. And before we introduce the district attorney, we've been joined by our assembly sponsor, Assemblyman Mike Cusick, who is a staunch advocate for issues like this. Assemblyman.
Thank you. Thanks, Senator. I just want to thank Senator Flanagan for reaching out to me to sponsor this in the Assembly. I've been working in the Assembly on the prescription drug issue with the database, and this situation, I think it all comes together, and it's something that I've opened my eyes on this synthetic cannabis issue. and it's something that I want to thank Senator Flanagan for including me in on. I've been working with Assemblyman Zabrowski over in the Assembly on some legislation on this, so I think this is very important that we have the people we have here today, that the Senator has put together to move this forward, move the discussion forward, get something passed, because this is dangerous. This is about our young people. This is about the folks who are using this thinking that it's not harmful when it really is. And I want to commend the Senator and all my colleagues here for moving this forward. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. And with no further ado, our District Attorney, Kate Hope.
Good afternoon. When you say synthetic marijuana, it sounds innocuous. Synthetic marijuana, how bad can it be? It is a very different substance than organic marijuana, and it is much more like a hallucinogen, like LSD. In our county, Warren County, I've had 2 cases that are extremely violent by an otherwise nonviolent 18-year-old. The 18-year-old was smoking synthetic marijuana. He took a knife and he stabbed his mother repeatedly, saying, "I want to kill you, I want to kill you." This is a kid who had stellar recommendations from teachers in schools, said, "I can't believe he would do such a thing." He was starting community college. And once he started taking this, we saw very aberrant, violent conduct. So synthetic marijuana doesn't do the same thing as organic marijuana. It is very, very dangerous, and it instills in the person taking it a much more violent disposition that has led to many, many violent cases throughout the northern tier of New York. This is something that my colleagues in St. Lawrence, Clinton, Hamilton, Warren, Washington, and Essex County are battling regularly. I don't think it is used as much in metropolitan New York, and I don't know why. But it is extremely dangerous, and it leads to very violent conduct. So I really commend my senator, Senator Little, Senator Flanagan, and the co-sponsors of this legislation, because it is not the same. It is a dangerous drug, and it needs to be treated as a dangerous drug. You'll hear from Jim Dexter, superintendent of BOCES, and what I'm hearing from the school administrators is they have no recourse when the kids come into the schools and they're in possession of this drug. So outlawing it is not to incarcerate any of these kids. It's to make sure that anyone who's tempted to use it will not use it because it's illegal. And if they are using it and they're on it, what we want to do is get them off of it and have them seek treatment. It's too dangerous, and it could result in really violent conduct. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. We're now joined by our BOCES superintendent, and he represents the 31 school districts in Warren, Saratoga, Essex, Hamilton, and Washington counties. And he also is responsible for the flyer that you see on your desk here. Jim Dexter. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Jim Dexter. I'm the district superintendent of the Washington, Saratoga, Warren, Hamilton, and Essex BOCES. And in doing so, I work with 31 schools in my region. And of all the topics that have come to my attention in the last year, this is one that has come with some of the most fervor and passion. When we had an opportunity to speak to some of our principals, we really started to see some of the issues. This isn't a rite of passage for youngsters. It's a very, very difficult issue for a couple reasons. One is some of the violence that has been associated with it. What we see is sometimes students who don't regularly engage in activities such as alcohol or other substance abuse that might be illegal. Some of our students, because it is legal, they will engage in this activity, and it's created great violence. Our teachers note that when the students are in the classroom, they have really very, very significantly reduced ability to handle the material or to interact in a positive way. Some students have very, very adverse effects. One of our principals was talking about a student who's generally been a good student who was on this and threw a book at a police officer when they came to intervene in a situation. Another issue that our principals tell us is because it's not criminal, quite often the police can't get involved. So we may have a very violent incident, or we may have a student who is potentially violent, and quite often the police will come and work with the building principal to try to resolve the situation, make the situation better. And because it's not criminal, the police often are hesitant to get involved. Many of our principals have suspended students for short or long periods of time because of their involvement in this. And one of the things that is striking to me when I've spoken to some of the principals is that many of the students who have had incidents are students who traditionally haven't been in trouble before, students who, as I mentioned before, haven't been involved with using illegal substances or alcohol. So it really has had a great and devastating effect on learning and the children. And as I mentioned, it's not really a rite of passage. I really am very appreciative of Senator Little, Senator Flanagan, and their colleagues for taking on this issue. I think if you speak to any educational leader, you'll understand how important this is. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Just last but not least, if you look at statistics, and again, this is information that we gather from our colleagues in various legislatures, across the country from 2010 to 2011, there was a tripling of the number of calls to poison control centers on these substances alone. I'm not talking about overall calls, but just on this alone. That's prompted a number of states to take affirmative action. We're obviously trying to do the same thing. And we want to make sure that we're giving the right tools to our law enforcement personnel. With that, any questions?
I have a question for someone in Cusick. Has there been any discussion in your house passing this bill that's going to pass today?
Well, there has been discussion on this issue. There's a number I'm sorry. Yes, there's a number of bills in our House. I know that, as I mentioned, Assemblyman Zabrowski has a bill that we've been working together on, and we are pushing this issue in our House.
But there's no commitment or there's no support, as you're aware, to pass this specific bill?
Well, I think commitment and support are two different words. At this point, there is no commitment yet to move it. I know there have been discussions with leadership on this issue that Assemblyman Zabrowski has had, and we look forward to moving this forward.
Ken, I also think, in fairness, the stories that came out of the Daily News, that was a catalyst for the governor taking immediate action. That I was confident we would pass this bill as something similar in the Senate anyway, but if we get this bill passed today and there's a lot more attention paid to it through the media, frankly, that's going to put more pressure on the Assembly, and obviously we have a strong ally in Assemblyman Cusick.
Senator Flanagan, you referenced a lot of increased violence, whatever that's happening with the drug, but certainly more people die or become violent from, say, alcohol. So why the push to actually ban it? Why not alcohol? Why not just regulate the drug and say make it illegal for people under 18, just like a little bit of products? Why the ban?
I don't even think they have to use this in excess to be violent. I think that the hallucinations and the things that come along with it, and the actual fact that for young kids this is legal. Alcohol is illegal for anyone under the age of 21.
So why not do that?
Because we think that this is different from any other drug because of the violence that it's caused. We had a man who, he and his wife or whatever, or girlfriend, were smoking it all day, got into a horrific fight, pushed her down the stairway, smashed her face into a mirror, then pushed her down the stairway while she was holding their 7-week-old child.
Countless stories, though, of the same magnitude or worse with alcohol or...
I think the reason is that this was legal, and I think that one of the things that's also affecting this, and it's rural areas are seeing the impact probably first before the urban areas are, because it's accessible and it's inexpensive.
Is there any way to crack down on the internet providers of this, especially the people who sell it to people who are over the age of 18?
You know what? I'm going to defer in a respectful way. I think this is where law enforcement plays a critical role. They have very talented people who can help regulate these things. If you look at the database we're trying to put through with the health department, now criminalizing not only the sale and possession, that's going to help get the word out. The effective dates that we talked about, but I believe that whether it's Kate Hogan or my district attorney, Tom Spoda, that they will do a very strong positive effort in making sure that no matter where it may come, that they'll go after it.
Sale is outlawed, Nick, so if you can track it back to the computer provider, then you can prosecute that person. It would be concurrent jurisdiction, both where the sale was consummated. So there would be jurisdiction to go to the internet provider.
Even if it's in another state?
Correct, because the sale crosses two jurisdictions, so it would be concurrent jurisdiction.
Mr. Flanagan, the Assemblyman referred to the painkiller database, where the main opposition, as far as I know, if my understanding is right, is from medical society and doctors who don't want to be bothered with having to look up a patient's prescription history. Does the Republican conference in the Senate have a position on that bill?
I don't know which specific bill you're referring to, and I would just respectfully say,
The bill to manage and require both pharmacists and doctors to have one central database where people cannot, and Kate can explain this to you, where people cannot repeatedly go drug seeking for what's ostensibly a more commonly abused drug.
a couple of quick things. Obviously, there are two very separate and distinct issues, even though they may seemingly be related. I don't want to pretend to speak for our conference. That is an issue that we will discuss probably at great length because of the complexity and the substance of the issues. But I'm going to use as an example, while we can get the expertise of somebody like Kate Hogan, I will listen very carefully to Senator Hannan. I know Senator Lanza has taken a keen interest in this subject as well. That has not been fully vetted, but I'm sure that we will effectuate some positive compromise before the end of the session.
So there's not a companion bill to this specifically in the Assembly?
Oh, no, there absolutely is. That's Assemblyman McCusick is carrying that bill.
But there's a number of other bills?
There's a number of other bills in our House that are different technically or amend a different part of the law that this bill does, but this is the companion. This is the same as to Senator Flanagan's bill.
All right. But this isn't in a position to go in the Assembly at any time right now?
Well, none of the bills are right now. They're all still in the Codes Committee from what I gather.
Senator Flanagan, is there any thought, is this more of a rural drug? You guys have given a lot of examples of up in the North Country and such. Is there any thought where this is a rural drug, or is it pretty much a problem everywhere?
No, I think it's a problem everywhere. And, you know, look, if this sounds corny, I don't really care. We're one state. And if it's a rural problem, it could very easily turn into an urban problem tomorrow. Or it could be suburban going to urban. Kids are going to be who they are. And it's a wicked combination. You have kids who are, in many respects, willing to go out there and try almost anything, especially if it looks like it's cool. And then we have one of the underpinnings that is a problem in our capitalist society. The bad guys want to make money. There are people who, and this is where I think it's different when the district attorney was talking about from organic marijuana. And I don't know how to do this, but you have people who are in their garages figuring out, you know, we're going to tinker with this chemical this way, we're going to move this compound a little bit, it's going to get dicier, it's going to get stronger. So if it finds itself in rural communities, because Betty has talked to me about this, I've gotten letters from people in her community supporting our legislation. It's something that is applicable statewide and frankly across the country. And again, many state legislators have taken very positive action.
One more question? I just wanted to know, I'm just slightly confused. Is this something that is mostly a problem with teenagers, or is it, are you seeing this with adults as well?
Yeah.
No, it outlaws the possession and the sale. So it isn't just teenagers, but you raise an interesting point. We have a heavy use in the teen population, but we have adult probationers who are not allowed to have alcohol, use alcohol or marijuana, and they have found out that synthetic marijuana is legal, so that is what they're now using. So it just shows you that outlawing it does deter conduct, because alcohol and marijuana is specifically listed on their terms and conditions of probation. But they're now adding the synthetic marijuana because we saw a sharp trend to having adult probationers now use it because they thought they could get away with it.
I think the packaging is certainly something that attracts the teenagers. If you look at the flyer that Jim Dexter put together with some of his principals, to have this stuff in Pez containers and have a big smiley face on it, you know, it's just something that we have to really get rid of and do something about.
Thank you.
Thank you.